Well, hello everyone. You are listening and watching Rashkin Report. If we are live, yes, we are now. And I am very excited to be joined on this program by Slava Malamud. But before we get to Slava, let us figure out what the topic of the conversation is today. First of all, you may notice we're speaking in English. Well, I mean, I'm already, Slava will be. And there's a purpose and a reason for this. And that is that we are dealing with two athletes who are playing in the United States, well, one of them is from the United States. And now they're both stuck in Russia. So I thought it would be a wonderful opportunity to bring on the air Slava, who is a sports journalist, and to discuss the two individuals in question. One of them is a Russian, Finnish-born, but formerly goalie for the Russian national hockey team, Ivan Fedotov. And the other one is a basketball player, formerly player for WNBA, Brittney Griner. Well, let's get to it. Slava, welcome to the program. How are you doing tonight?
Good evening, doing well, thank you.
Well, let's start with Mr. Fedotov because he is, I guess, I don't know, why not? Let's start with him. His story is interesting in a sense that he made, I mean, there's lots of people that left Russia recently. But so far, until Mr. Fedotov, the rest of them would first leave Russia and then would say that they disapproved of the regime and they weren't going to play in Russia anymore, for instance. This kind of Mr. Fedotov did it backwards. First, he announced that he wasn't going to play. Actually, first, I think he signed with Philadelphia Flyers. Then he announced he wasn't going to play. And then go figure, he got into now he's in the army now, as a song from the 80s goes. He's in the army now. What are your thoughts on this as a sports journalist, as somebody who's been living in the United States for many years and pays a lot of attention to hockey in particular? Were you surprised by Mr. Fedotov? Were you surprised by what happened to him? Is there perhaps, he spoke his mind, and isn't that what people are supposed to be doing? Like, what are your thoughts on this?
I don't think it's so much a case of him speaking his mind. I don't think there was any type of politics or principles involved in the situation other than the principle of Ivan Fedotov wanting to play in the NHL, live in America, and earn American dollars. Um, and whether that be his dream or whether he would just find the prospect of playing in the United States more comfortable for himself personally. I don't think he ever said anything that approached any type of dissident activity or any type of disapproval. Instead, what he did is he greatly displeased his boss, Igor Sechin, who is the owner of Russia's biggest oil company. The oil company that was all the way back when the world was young and innocent, was taken from Mikhail Khodorkovsky by Putin, as Khodorkovsky was on his way to serving many years in jail, and given to Mr. Sechin. Sechin, of course, is Putin's one of Putin's closest friends and closest allies. And he was rewarded that way. As Khodorkovsky was sent away to Siberia, Sechin became one of the richest people in Russia for doing nothing but being Putin's friend. Sechin and his company rather has acquired CSKA, the club formerly known as the Central Sports Club of the Army, which still retains some very nominal connections to the Russian army. He was not very happy that Fedotov wanted to leave for Philadelphia for whatever reasons. Sechin doesn't have to provide reasons. He's a person who can make you disappear with a slight motion of his eyebrows. He doesn't need to provide reasons or explain himself. He just didn't want Fedotov to go. Fedotov decided he was going to go anyway because he wanted to play in the NHL. And Sechin told, "Oh yeah, well, you have another thing coming, and you're going to be thinking about this for however long I tell you to." And that definitely has all the hallmarks of a feudal boss, which is what powerful men in Russia still are. exercising his power and showing his peon what it's like to disobey him. And also, obviously, it's a message being sent to others. Since Seiska is still very nominally connected to the army, Fedotov basically was playing hockey on a deferment, but was still kind of sort of considered a service member. So they could conscript him at any time they wanted. Obviously, that's not the power they had exercised before, not since the Soviet days, but they felt like they could do it now because who is going to stop them? And that's what happened to him, basically, in a nutshell.
What is but what is the point of being a hockey player in Russia these days? It's like intramural sports. Who are you gonna play?
Well, I mean, they're making pretty good money playing hockey and in Russia. And if you're not going to play in the NHL, that's the place you want to play. I mean, in fact, the KHL is still signing a whole lot of talent from Canada, from Europe. Not a lot of people, not a lot of athletes have very high principles. Not a lot of athletes are aware of the situation in the world or care about it. I mean, they're not necessarily the cross-section of society that is particularly well known for their brain power.
I mean, without even going that far, I think there's plenty of people who are not athletes who, when offered a good contract in a country with human right abuses, go, well, that's not my problem. I mean, we have plenty of people working from Saudi Arabia and lots of other countries, right? It's not, you don't have to be like, I don't know, Jesus Christ in order to be like,
one could argue as a country is waging a war at its neighbor, actively engaging in war crimes and sending young people to die right there and there, and killing people in the middle of Europe, it might give some people a pause, and it has. I mean, there's a lot of Swedish and Czech and Finnish players who very publicly broke their contracts with the KHL clubs. An entire team, Jokerit Helsinki, exited the league as soon as Russia invaded. And Yuri, an absolute legend of Finnish hockey. I mean, he's basically the Finnish Gretzky, who owned Jokerit and who was the man behind Jokerit's originally joining the KHL over the objection of the Finnish hockey community. He is now has to face with the fact that his legacy is tarnished, and he is owned up to it. Like, his legacy is tarnished in Finland now by association with Putin, by having his club serve as a money laundering operation for Putin's oligarchs while they were in the KHL. And that just goes on his permanent record. And you cannot mention the name of Jari Kurri now in Finland without acknowledging the fact that, he's done those things. And there's a lot of athletes who are out there who are just like, whatever, I don't care. Russia, not Russia. It's money. It's my livelihood. I love playing hockey. Hockey is more important to me. And to be fair,
what about those sanctions? Shouldn't sanctions make even economy struggle, including sports? I mean, or is this just oil money and there's always oil money?
For a lot of these companies that own these hockey teams in the KHL, and I'm not talking about all the KHL teams. Some of these operate out of the local budgets, and they will definitely suffer. But you look at SKA St. Petersburg, that's owned by Gazprom. You look at Seiska, that's owned by Rosneft. And these teams, even though the companies owned by them are under sanctions and have been under sanctions since 2014, the salaries that they pay these players are rounding errors in their budgets. For them to be able to field a championship team is basically a vanity project for Putin's close friends. The fact that CSKA Moscow has won a couple of titles lately is just a little piece of propaganda, a little feather in Sechin's cap, an ability for him to say that I have once again elevated the great Red Army team of Soviet legend back to its rightful place on the top of the hockey pinnacle. I mean, that's just this is just nothing but an ability for a couple of very powerful people to have a conversation piece. Whereas Maybe for people in Magnitogorsk, it may mean something else because there is literally nothing else to do in Magnitogorsk. There's two hobbies in Magnitogorsk: hockey and dying of black lung. And without hockey, there's only one hockey, or there's only one thing left. And yeah, obviously they need to have that team. And the same goes for Chelyabinsk. The same goes for a place like Taliati. There's nothing else there but hockey. The hockey serves a very important social function in those cities. But for Sechin and for the Rothenbergs and whoever else owns those big city teams, it's a vanity project. So if he wants to take his starting goalie and put him on an Arctic outpost to serve a year just to prove a point, he'll definitely do it because he can always buy another one.
Then what do you think is going to happen to Mr. Fedotov now that, as you mentioned, as far as we know, he has been sent on to like North Pole to serve his time in in Russian army? Could he be like, oh, I'm sorry, I don't know what I was thinking. I love you, Mr. Sechin. Can I go play again? Is that an option for him, do you think?
As long as he doesn't say anything to the tune of people who run Russian hockey are criminals, this war is unjust, I want to get out of here, please save me, Mr. Bettman, he'll be fine. He'll do his penance, he'll serve his 1 year in the military, then he'll probably be sent away to some second-rate club until and if somebody decides to forgive him and either let him go or bring him back to one of the more prominent teams. I mean, he knows the lay of the land. He knows that this is probably the least unpleasant thing that can happen to him. Yeah, I mean, he is in one of the northernmost places in the world right now, but it's not like he's going to be chopping wood there. I mean, he's probably just going to get an easy athlete detail there, maybe serving as a physical culture instructor or something in the local outpost, and it's going to be for a year, and then that's it. It's going to be back to hockey. I think people tend to over dramatize this for several reasons. The first reason is that people still have very dramatic notions of what Russian gulags are. And the second reason is that people in this country, in the United States, and in Canada in particular, when it comes to hockey, still tend to only care about apocalyptic world events when they affect their personal convenience, including their own entertainment choices. And there's a lot of hockey fans right now in North America. And this is what gets me the most. I mean, Fedotov or no Fedotov, what gets me the most about this situation is that for 8 years now, since 2014, the entire hockey community in North America has been perfectly happy to dismiss the entire war in Russia. And just like you said, like, who cares? I mean, we don't care. Bring more Russian talent. We love you guys. We adore you. We're going to shower you with attention and love and allow you to make lots of money here. And then go back home to Russia and grovel at Putin's feet and serve as his propaganda vehicle.
Once again, we're used to this kind of a segmentation of being able to separate the person from the politics, right? Isn't that what we're supposed to do?
Except that in Russia, they're not really separable. And, Fedotov won the bronze medal for a non-existent country in this year, and Putin happily used them in his propaganda, and he was happily allowed himself to be used. He wore the Team USSR jersey in a few games, and hey, if you want the USSR to come back, well, there you go. Now he's back in the USSR. Now Fedotov gets to experience what Soviet athletes experienced when they expressed the wish to go play abroad.
Well, maybe he will now skate all the way to America. Like there was a heroic swimmer who swam across the sea to get out of the Soviet Union. Maybe Fedotov will skate away. But there's
to get back to my point. Suddenly, people start worrying about it. Suddenly, all these Islander fans are worrying about Sorokin, their goalie, or suddenly all these Flyers fans are worrying about Fedotov. Suddenly you get all these other fans of other teams saying, "Oh, how does it change the draft strategy of my team?" You know what? I really couldn't care less. I mean, guys, seriously, for 8 years, people have been trying to tell you these guys are foot soldiers of Putin's propaganda. You can't separate sports from politics in Russia. Ovechkin is not just your favorite hockey entertainer who flashes a toothless grin and scores puts a whole bunch of rubber in the net somewhere and makes you happy. He is a willing and an enthusiastic supporter of genocide. He wanted this war. He promoted this war. And now all of a sudden you start caring. Well, where were you before? Seriously, I couldn't care about what happens to Fedotov. There are people in Ukraine I care a lot more about. This guy is just Putin's foot soldier. He got what he deserved. Now, if this was an athlete who vocally opposed Putin and suffered for it, that's a different situation. This is just a little spat between a couple of players, one major and one minor, in Putin's entire sports as a propaganda tool operation that he's been running there for 20 years. The fact that people suddenly start caring about them, this glib indifference to what's been happening with Russia and how the athletes have been used. Like, people would say things like, "Oh, keep politics out of my sports. I don't care about what Ovechkin does when he's back in Russia. All I care about is that he makes my kids smile. He scores goals." Well, I'm sorry. Well, you know what else he did? He recruited the people to go to fight in Donbass in 2014. There's a bunch of kids who lost their parents because of him. And now suddenly start caring because potential backup goalie for the Flyers isn't going to be there next year. Screw that, seriously.
So Putin is killing my fantasy league, kind of.
Yeah, exactly. Like now we have real victims, hockey fans in North America who are suddenly being deprived of a small portion of their entertainment. I mean, hockey. As a hockey fan, and I have a hockey stick right here, and both my kids played, and I love hockey, but hockey has a really big provincial mindset / small sport issue. It's a huge inferiority complex because they constantly compare themselves to the NBA, which they will never reach in popularity, newsflash, and they constantly feel inferior. And they constantly want to prove to somebody how important their sport is. And they're just slavishly loyal to their stars. And they think rooting for Russians makes them more sophisticated or something. I don't know. There's some kind of a mentality going on there. This reflexive knee-jerk reaction to protect Russian players against any accusation of being a willful tool of Putin. Guess what? They are willful tools of Putin. Most of them. Varlamov, another Islanders goalie, strutted around America in a T-shirt that said "Crimea is ours." Radulov was a member of Putin team that Ovechkin organized. So was Malkin. A whole lot of these guys are very big Putin fans and love taking selfies with him, and they love going to Kremlin after they win gold medals.
But hey, even Putin himself likes to play hockey.
He does this entirely for that exact reason, because hockey is a great propaganda tool. It has always been in Russia. It's one sport that people care about, in which Russia can beat the West. Like,
yes, because Russians, they really love soccer, but they really suck at it. But
absolutely, yeah. And basketball, the same thing. They know that America is going to beat them 11 times out of 10. And yeah, Russians can throw the discus farther, and they can slide on sleds faster, but nobody cares. These are not the sports that anybody knows. These are sports people care about once every 4 years, but hockey is the one people sport that people actually care about, in which Russia could prove to the West that it's right about something. And Brezhnev knew it, right? And before Brezhnev, Vasily Stalin knew it. I mean, people in charge in Russia always knew that hockey was their one propaganda tool that they could use more effectively than any other sport. And Putin has been all over it.
So this is a situation of a somebody who displeased his boss and therefore was sent off to a northern territory to service time in the army, but it really highlights more of the kind of the lack of a moral component to dealing with Russia, that when you're an athlete and you embrace dictatorships and you're that's can be very hazardous, and we'll talk about Brittney Griner in a second, but
And
it
yeah, and
also
our compatriots, our fellow Americans, need to understand that their hockey is not as important as the things that hockey is being used for in Russia. And just gotta live with the fact that what, maybe your faves, maybe your big idols and icons that make your kids smile, just maybe aren't worth that devotion. And,
you just make me think that if there was some horrible person who was a great hockey player or an athlete, then the fans would be like, okay, it's okay. I mean, look at the goals.
Hockey fans would be. There is a difference, and I don't know.
Maybe
Maybe
like an anti-hockey fan show now. I didn't realize it.
Maybe it's not a hockey problem. Maybe it's just the fact that these are foreigners in the foreign land, and North Americans don't really care. Because whenever somebody in any American sport does something heinous, like for instance says something racist, they rightfully become pariahs. When they beat their spouse, they become pariahs. When they're caught abusing drugs or beating their children, or when they murder somebody, the people are not okay with this. But when they support a foreign dictator, in other sports it's not a big deal, because there's not to my knowledge there's any baseball or basketball players that explicitly support a foreign dictator.
We have, I'm trying to think of the really wonderful football player who had a lot of problems with when he was with Atlanta Falcons because he was involved in dog fights. What was his name?
Yeah, Michael Vick. And he went to jail for 3 years, and he became completely ostracized. And there's a lot of people, even though he has done a lot of good work after being released from jail. And I'm not talking about in the football field. He did a lot of charity work, and he worked for
he apologized. I think he still does for that.
And he went beyond that. He worked for animal rights charities and stuff like that. But still, people still don't forgive him because he was involved in cruelty to dogs, and people still don't forgive him. But Ovechkin
cruelty, are Ukrainians below dogs? I mean, what's going on?
They're foreigners, and who knows? It's complicated. I don't care about politics. Keep politics away from my sports. It's my escape mechanism. That BS, that really drives me up the wall. And maybe you should educate yourself. Maybe if you're going to be a fan of a Russian hockey player, maybe you want to educate yourself about what Russian hockey is all about. Maybe you don't want. Maybe for your own moral growth, you should know what you're actually supporting, instead of swallowing the propaganda that the Washington Capitals feed you about who Ovechkin is. Washington Capitals don't care about Ovechkin's moral outlook. They, like any business, they want to make as much money as possible out of him.
See, now that's not really. I mean, with all due respect to the desire of businesses to make money, we have plenty of businesses who are able to make ethical decisions.
Yeah, and some who can't. and this is why, and this is the job of the consumers and of the media to call them out on that. Hockey media isn't going to do anything because they're completely beholden to the corporations they cover. And hockey consumers,
in general, sports media is beholden to the sports leagues. We know this.
And some more than others. Hockey definitely a lot more, because hockey writers in America do not have the same security. Job security, because they can fire the guy who writes for the Washington Capitals tomorrow and nobody's going to notice because nobody cares. In Canada it might be different, but an ESPN writer, for instance, who writes about basketball might be a big celebrity in their own right. But hockey writers in America don't really have that clout, and clubs feel that they can do whatever they want with them. I had that experience myself. When I called out Ovechkin back in 2014 on his explicit support of the war in Ukraine, And the Washington Capitals immediately blacklisted me and took my credential away, and they felt they could do it with impunity because, who cares? Hockey writers, especially a foreign hockey writer, is powerless. And fans don't care. Fans really don't care. All they want is they want their favorite puck whacker to whack more pucks. This is their alpha and omega. This is the entire nexus of their existence, and that is sad.
That sounds so Russian.
It is. Because, like I said, it's either this or dying of black lung. I mean, Americans should probably have more options, but hockey fans in America are just this myopic, I guess.
All right. Well, I'll take this opportunity to remind everyone that you're listening and watching Rashkin Report. My name is Yuri Rashkin, and my guest today is sports journalist who is not allowed on the Capitals Twitter, Slava Malamud. Slava, let's take a look at the other situation, because really, when I saw that we have two sports stories that are like the main stories today coming out of Russia, and I thought, well, Slava, we have to talk. Brittney Griner, the 6'10" African-American member of LGBTQ plus community, basketball player, goes, flies, and gets stopped at the airport in Moscow with basically a vape, and is now being tried and looking at jail sentence, I'm sure. Sure. How are you looking at this situation? I would just add that she has a history of playing in Russia since 2014.
Yep.
And so on some level, again, we go, what is the moral component here? Maybe it's not present, but still, I mean, she's a human being, and we have morals and we have empathy. So, like, what do you, or maybe you don't? I don't know.
Again, when it comes to foreign players choosing to play in Russia, I mean, I tend to discount it as a fact that they don't really care very much and not really well informed. But when it comes to female basketball player, this is the place where you can make money. Let's face it. Female basketball players in America aren't going to make a lot of money, and not in Europe either. There's only precisely one league in the world where female basketball players can make good living, and even in that league, it's only like we're talking 2 or 3 clubs, and the options are really, really limited. So it's basically Yekaterinburg. And that's it. And it's been.
Is there some wealthy oligarch that owns the Yekaterinburg team?
Yeah, it's UMMC, the major company there, the metallurgical plant. They, for some reason.
Where does the black lung come from? Go ahead.
For a very long time, they have supported women's basketball, and they've built an elite basketball team, and they have a history of attracting elite, like the super elite female talent. We're talking Michael Jordans of basketball, like Sue Bird played there. If you can attract Sue Bird or Marita Orazi, that's it. I mean, it's Lionel Messi for those of us soccer inclined. They are the team to play for, and I mean, as much as unsavory as it is, to go to Russia and to play in Russia since 2014, it's kind of a little bit harder to blame these players to being swayed by this type of opportunity. Now, having said that, I doubt that she would have come back.
Wait a minute. Are you being more forgiving of the Americans playing in Russia versus Russians playing in America? What's going on?
No, specifically female basketball players playing in Russia. I mean, not so much forgiving situation. Where else are you going to make a living? I wouldn't do it if I were them, even if that was the only opportunity for me to make good money. But once again, I discount the fact that they're not particularly the most informed, most politically active, in many cases, brightest people in the world, because they're athletes.
Again, let's just keep the bright from informed. Let's say they're uninformed and they don't care because the money is good.
Fair enough.
For a lot of people.
Fair enough. But the thing with her, when you just described her, and if I was to put a big whiteboard in the back here with big words on top of it, things Russians hate, or things that drive Russians up the wall, you've listed a whole bunch of them right now. 6'10" woman, black, LGBT, American.
Wow, it's like a bingo.
Yes, it's a bingo. It's the Russian hate bingo and the free space. And the thing is, this was too good of an opportunity for Putin to pass up.
Are you saying Putin decided to put Brittney Griner in jail?
Well, obviously somebody in the Russian law enforcement decided it, but the calculus of is Putin going to approve this definitely went into this decision making. Of course, because this is an international incident. But it's a slam dunk for them, because if there is anything that's going to make the great majority of Russian society nod with approval, it's busting a female lesbian American basketball player who happens to be black with drugs. Yeah, I mean, that's a slam dunk.
Wait a minute. Weren't Russians supposed to be for black people, supporting black people all over the world, Soviet Union, all of that stuff? What happened?
Yeah, right. There's only a couple of things in society in Russia right now that can unite pro-Putin and anti-Putin forces. And that's one of them is their absolute hatred for Greta Thunberg, for whatever reason, and the other is their absolute hatred for Black Lives Matter. But yeah, I mean, that aside, though, the sentences for drugs in Russia are absolutely ridiculous. And I caught a kid with a vape pen in my classroom a couple of months ago. I probably should have been suspended. Instead I chose to speak to his parents, and it wasn't a big issue. But in Russia, that's enough to get you sent away for a while. Drug sentences are huge, and she was not very informed in taking that particular item with her to the airport, which doesn't make what's happening to her fair, because she's being used as a political instrument right now, a playing card in this game that Putin is playing. But yeah, I mean, she's definitely very deeply in it right now, and I wouldn't be surprised to see her being sent away for a while.
Do you think she will be then exchanged for some Russian spy, or how's this going to go?
That's up to people who are doing this to decide whether she is a heavy enough chip in this game or not, bargaining chip of any kind.
Well, she turned now, asking to President Biden, asking him for help. How do you view presidents getting involved with these types of rescue missions?
We know there wasn't any type of publicity that Trump was adverse to when it came to ingratiating himself with celebrities. And we all remember how he got the rapper, what's his name, freed from the horrible captivity in Sweden. But that's Trump just trying.
Sweden jail. Okay.
Trump just loves being near celebrities and stuff like that. I know that
he was a president. He has power. Would Putin listen to Biden?
But yeah, that's one thing is Sweden. The other thing is Putin. I don't think Putin is inclined to listen to anything Biden says right now. The relations are that bad. I think at this point, she's just going to be sent away just out of pure spite. Like, see, that's what we can do to one of your famous people. And unfortunately, there's a lot more people in America who care about Ivan Fedotov and Ovechkin's family than they care about female basketball players. Again, this is just the calculus of business, and sport, and women's sports are not as big earners in the United States, and people don't seem to care about this enough. If something bad happens to her in prison, then yeah, they'll probably make front pages. But right now, at this point, it's just going to be just another piece of news. And Putin knows this, so he can just, he can do this. And in fact, if he does want to generate bad publicity for Biden, he can make sure that things are bad for her in Russia, and he can make sure that information gets leaked, because then Biden becomes responsible for an American getting tortured or killed or sick in a Russian jail.
What message do you feel this sends to other athletes? Because are other female basketball players willing to risk what happened to Brittney Griner in order to receive that good paycheck from Yekaterinburg basketball club, or is this going to spell doom for poor Yekaterinburg, and they all will have left as just a metallurgical black lung?
I know that with Americans specifically, there's a very strong recommendation not to travel to Russia right now. Some people will probably ignore it. Some people will probably take that paycheck and go. Women's basketball community is very tightly knit. There's not a lot of them, and especially elite basketball players. They know each other well. They're all big friends. They all talk to each other. And Brittney Griner means a whole lot to these people, a lot more than it means to the wider basketball community, the fans of basketball in the United States. So what happened to her will definitely be a major, major wake-up call to female American basketball players. But that's not to say that some Canadian hockey player won't go and play for Sky. And in fact, one of them signed this week. A lot of them will just say, hey, to hell with it, I don't care. Some of them might say, hey, you know what? I admire Putin. Because whatever. I mean, there's a lot of people in North America, particularly the less informed ones, who like Putin, who think he's either a defender of Christian values or the guy who stands up to American imperialism or whatever the heck. They swallow all this stuff. And athletes probably are more susceptible to it than others because they consume information from foreign colleagues, and again, they're not probably inclined to care as much about politics and educate themselves as much about politics. So yeah, I mean, a lot of athletes will still go and play in Russia, and a lot of them probably will be careless enough to expose themselves to something like this. But Putin, just like Trump, loves when celebrities praise him. This is one ticket to his good graces. He really, really, really loves and cherishes it when foreign athletes come and say good things about him. In fact, a former Arsenal player did this today, which doesn't surprise me because, let's face it, Arsenal. And a guy from Togo said that he loves Putin as a man. And oh my goodness, this was all over Russian news today. The Tottenham Hotspur player would never have said that, by the way. I want to go on the record. But what to expect from
Arsenal, okay.
Yeah,
different level of expectations, clearly.
Scum FC being Scum FC.
Well, I always like to look at a situation and go, what's the lesson here? Is there a lesson in what happened to Mr. Fedotov and Ms. Griner that you see, or is it just I don't know, what's the moral of the story here?
Well, with Griner, it's quite obvious. Just guys, seriously, stay away from Russia. No paycheck is worth this, and it's bad for your health. It's bad for your life, apparently, maybe, and it's bad for your moral outlook. Just don't. WNBA doesn't offer as big of a paycheck, but all in all, it's a better deal at this point in history. When it comes to Fedotov, that's more of a lesson for NHL fans. Guys, seriously, get a grip. This is bigger than your entertainment choices. These guys, even if all of them wind up playing for SKA Kamchatka tomorrow, it's their business. It's their lookout. It's their country that they've represented, that they've proudly served, that they always said that they're defending the honor of. Well, you know what? It's their time to face the music for being good little soldiers of Putin's propaganda machine. It's time for you maybe to educate yourself and to divorce yourself from the slavish loyalty to Russian hockey talent. Hockey is not everything in the world. Hockey is a wonderful sport, good game to play, good game to watch. But if you want your kid to smile, you can take him to a high school game. Your kid doesn't care. Your kid cares about you going to a game with you, not about whether it's Ovechkin or Crosby or whoever else you're taking them to watch.
So
Just
it's
serious.
maybe it's not your kid that is smiling. Maybe it's you that is
Yeah,
smiling. You know.
probably. Yeah, I mean, seriously, sense of perspective is always nice. And there are dead bodies in the streets of Ukrainian cities right now. That's the perspective that should be first and foremost in your mind, not what happens to some CSKA player, because whatever. I think I think that's a lesson that all of us probably would be well served to take in.
Slava Malamud, thank you so much for joining me here today, and I want to thank everybody who stayed with us and enjoyed, I think, a very insightful conversation, which we like to have on this channel. So hit like, subscribe, and share this video in your social media. Perhaps maybe even share it with some hockey fans if you know some of them, because, sounds like they need to hear it. You're listening and watching Rashkin Report, and I'm your host, Yuri Rashkin. Until we meet again, take care, everybody.
Everyone.